Welcome to the podcast for all you leaders out there who are making a difference every day. We're glad you're with us today. Last week, we talked about planning going into the fourth quarter here of the year. We're excited about that. We gave you really some things to help you as you think about creating a really great plan for your team and your organization. This week, we're going to help you hopefully create a plan for the hardest person you're going to lead, and that is you. If you ask me, the hardest person I've ever had to deal with is myself. I'm in the same boat. And so welcome to the Lead Everyday Show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And Mark, I can't remember the first time I was ever introduced to the idea of personal planning, having a personal development plan. I know it's been a long time ago. That's a nice way of calling myself old. I've been doing this for decades, been thinking about it for decades. I don't remember who first introduced me to the idea, but I believe in this so much. It's so important to have a plan rather than, just kind of winging it and see what happens.
Yeah. I don't remember when I started the discipline of creating an annual development plan. It's been a long time. I was fortunate to grow up in an organization that valued this, but I don't recall it being required. Now, there was ultimately a season when we required our staff to have an individual development plan, but I was doing this decades before we got to that point. So I'm not sure when I stumbled upon the idea, but I'm thankful that I did.
Okay, so let's get real here. There are leaders out there who are listening who probably are thinking, I've already got a good job. I've got an important role. I'm busy. I don't have time to do some development plan. It's like I'm learning on the fly kind of thing. I know I know from spending so much time with you that you'll probably go on a little rant right here, but for that leader out there who's thinking, why do I need a plan? What can you, we won't spend our time all talking about that, but can you just give us a little bit of, from your mind and heart, why this is so important? And we've both benefited from this so much.
Sure. Well, here's what I would say to that leader. You understand the value of planning. You've got a plan. If you're in an organization, a successful organization, there's a really good chance that you've got a plan. You probably have a growth plan. You may have a financial plan. In your personal life, you've probably got a retirement plan that you've created and that you're funding so that, you can rest assured about your future. You've probably got a marketing plan. Leaders understand planning. And they know that it's a way to leverage resources. It's a way to steward time. It's a way to maximize your impact. So I don't know why so many leaders feel like this discipline of planning is good in all these areas and arenas of life and business, but it wouldn't serve me. It's almost nonsensical.
Yeah. That's for sure. And you said it, how many times have I heard you say that no one drifts to greatness? I mean, it's like, we would not accept it if our people came and said, we're just going to see what happens this year. We don't really have a plan. That we wouldn't do that organizationally. Why would we even consider that individually? And I'll refer to something you actually talked about. You and I actually wrote about this together in the field guide as well. But when you wrote Culture Rules, you made a statement I thought was so powerful. You said that your culture is either going to happen by design or it's going to happen by default. And I think that ties in here. When you think about your life in the next year, whoever's listening, you can either design it or it'll happen by default. Your life is going to happen over the next year. If you don't give any thought to it and any intention to it, I think we all get that, like, without focus, we're very unlikely to hit the bullseye, right? We don't even know what it is. So this is a big deal.
The plan, it's a hedge against the busyness that attempts to ensnare us and engulf us. It won't eliminate all of the quicksand in your world, but I'd rather approach my day and my week and my month and my year with some sense of what I'm trying to accomplish and how I'm going to try to get there. If you don't plan, you have forfeited your agency. And that just feels wrong to me. And I feel like it should feel wrong to leaders. It's like they should care about the value they bring to their organization, and we should all care about how to add more value. We should be
Yeah.
concerned with how can we make a greater contribution in the next year than we did in the last year. And the answer to that hinges on our personal growth and development.
Yeah. I think also, Mark, that as I look back over, last year and then think about this year, I'm not going to have any more time this next year than I had last year. So the only really way to better utilize my time is going to be through the plan. My energy is, as I get older, it's limited. And my effort, I mean, I'm not as strong. I mean, as like you can start thinking about all these areas of your life, the things that you have limits on. The plan really is the place where you might be able to squeeze a little more or to direct your time, energy, and effort in a little more thoughtful way. And if you can do that, again, you do add more value as you're talking about. I think that's awesome.
I mean, your life is going to happen whether you have any control over it or not. And a plan helps you. I used the term agency earlier. Very few people I know can execute their personal plans flawlessly. But in my experience, and I think in yours as well, Randy, we accomplish more of what we would like to accomplish because we had a plan. And I just think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and you're gonna, I mean, to that point, Mark, we have better accountability when we have a plan as well. We know what to measure against. With this, what was our intention? If we have that written down and a way to measure that, and goals like we talked about last week for the organization, same thing's true here. I think now we've got something to be accountable to. And I think when a leader gets to a point where they don't really want to be accountable to a plan, they've lost it. I mean, at that point, you've lost your fastball. And so that's not what we know. That's not the way we ought to think. And so I love the idea that I've got a plan that gives me something to go back and measure, progress by.
Yeah. And to your earlier caution to me about not really just going on a rant here, we could spend an hour talking about why a plan for your life and mine, what we call a personal development plan, why it matters. But for me, the bottom line is it makes me better. I've lived life. It's been a long time, but I've lived life without a plan and I've lived life with a plan, and it helps me add more value to the world.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so if you're listening out there or watching and you've got other reasons to have a plan that are better than those, or you want to add anything to that, again, info@leadeveryday.com. You can email us your additional bullet points there. We'd love to know what you're thinking about out there. But look, Mark, I want to shift our conversation to it's something that we did over and over in our new Lead Everyday book. We taught this operating system, these 3 disciplines to build great leaders, great teams, and great companies. And we kept coming back to this little phrase, yes, but how. We like to talk about stuff, but we know that leaders are out there going, okay, tell me how to do that. And so I want to, if I'm thinking individual plan today, let's go down the road of yes, but how. I'm going to assume that everybody's on board with, we need a plan. But how do we create a good one? Let's make sure that we do kind of what we did last week. We give leaders something to think about. If they're creating an individual plan for this next year, what are some things that they need to think about? Let's go down that road.
Yeah, and I'll share the quick story that I shared last time for anybody who missed the last episode. The last episode was about how to create a great plan for your team, department, division, or organization. It was organizational planning. Well, several years back, I had the opportunity to lead the corporate planning team for Chick-fil-A Incorporated. And it was cross-functional. We had folks from 10 or 12 departments, and we were allocating all of the corporate budget and headcount. And of course, that much of that was predicated on what were the plans for the various departments and teams. And it was a pretty elaborate process. And I ended up hiring a consultant to help me lead that process well. And the essence of her counsel was the way to lead a beneficial, productive, high impact planning process is to ask the right question. And so last week we talked about, is there a list, or are there a set of magic questions? And I confessed previously that over the decades, I've used hundreds of questions to lead in corporate planning, team planning, department planning, and personal planning. But I think there's genius in that approach because if we'll ask the right questions, we're much more likely to get the right answers. And so, what I'd like for us to do during the balance of this session is to ask some of the questions that have helped me and you, and I would argue helped a lot of leaders build a vibrant, high impact personal development plan.
Yeah, that's I was thinking the same thing. I like the way last week went when we gave those questions for the organization and the team. I think it's really good to start with some questions to help us focus there. So
Yeah.
I'll
Let me say
start.
this before you jump in. Let me say this. I want to encourage the listeners and those watching this, create your own list. Ours can jumpstart your thinking, but we're only going to give you 8 or 10, and you may end up asking 30 or 40 or 50 questions as you create your plan. So don't hesitate as you hear our questions. My bet is that some of our questions will spark other questions, maybe better questions. So let this be the starting point, not the end game as you think about your personal plan.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, some of this will feel maybe even at least congruent to what we talked about last week. There's a couple of questions specifically that I think are relevant. I'll start with really a couple here when I'm to jumpstart my thinking as I look at my next year. I'm just going to start with, what do I want to be true at the end of the year? What do I want to be true then? I ask it all the time this way. What I want to be true in a year that's not true today? I think that's a good, let's make sure that we are thinking out, and you even pushed the teams last week and organizations to think a decade out. You can have your plan as expanded as you want to, but I want to go back to what I shared last week about for the team. I talked about, I'm going to look out. I'm going to think about where I'm going, but I also want to think about where I've been. And I think that may be a good starting place here is to ask the question, what have I learned over the last year about myself? What experiences have I had that have taught me, what has experience taught me? What can I do to make some adjustments, some changes? What do I want to stop doing? I mean, I could make a little list of questions that go under this bucket here, but I think just having a little bit of an evaluation time, I'll call it almost soul searching. You're going to need some time. We'll talk about that at the end, but we're going to need some time set aside to do this. But this is probably not something you've said before, you don't solve this in the shower. I mean, you're going to need some extended time to reflect on some of these questions. But one of them is, what did you learn in the last year? And let's get better over the next year. I think you said growth a minute ago. I like the idea of trying to get better, trying to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me add one nuance to that. I think it's always good to capture and document lessons learned, but be sure you're also thinking about your personal growth and development. What did you learn? Because that's a subset of life lessons.
Yeah.
And I just think as it relates to learning and growing, you may say, as an example, well, I've had a mentor in the past. I didn't have one last year, and that was not good. So what did you learn about learning? And what did you learn about growth in the last year? And I think that may give you some clues as to what you want to do differently going forward.
That's good. Okay, you got another question?
Well, it's related. What are the greatest hindrances, barriers, and obstacles to your personal growth that you experienced in the last year? I give you an example. For me, is I have determined over time, the more I review my plan, the more likely I am to execute the plan. And so it was in a time of reflection when I said a couple of years back, I didn't really do as well on my plan this year. Why not? And I realized I had spent less time reviewing my plan. So I made adjustments going forward. So again, what are the hindrances, barriers, and obstacles as it relates to your learning? Again, you want to learn from the past. You don't want to live there, but you want to learn from the past. And this is all foundational as you build for a new year.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Okay, Mark, one of the things I've been an advocate of over the years is to choose some what I'll call life domains. For lack of a better word, you can call them accounts, you can call them areas, whatever you want to call them. But what I mean by that is what are the areas that I want to target? And so some examples for me would be, I want to think about, I'm probably going to think about my work, vocationally, like that's going to be an area that I'm going to focus on. There'll be some things that I want to make sure that I address there. I'm going to think about my family. I don't want to, I always say if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. It's not just, let's not just build a great company and lose, our family, so to speak. And so family's going to be important to me. My faith is something that I want to have reflected in my plan. I don't want to just take a chance on, maybe I'll spend some time working on my faith, or maybe I won't. I really want to have some purpose and intention there. Financially, I'm gonna give some thought to that in my stage of life. I think everybody should, no matter what stage you are. Fitness for sure is going to be reflected in my plan, and so you can have a lot, relationships, social. I mean, you can add a bunch of stuff here. My list is not the list; it's just my list, and so I would encourage everybody to give some thought to the accounts in their life, the domains in their life that they want to focus on, and what are some targeted ways to plan accordingly in each of those areas. I'll give you one, kind of a other example that'll tie into this thought of there are going to be different accounts for different seasons. I'm in a different season of my life than I was a decade ago, even 5 years ago. I'm a granddad now, and so I want to give some thought to what does it look like to transfer, some of my values and some of my thinking to my grandkids. And as crazy as that sounds, like if I don't give some thought to that, what's that going to look like? I will, I'll be with my grandkids a lot, but there's a couple of things I want to talk to, the ones that are getting older now. I want to have some conversations, and I can be very strategic and purposeful about that, or I can just take a chance on it. And if I know me, if I leave stuff to chance, there's not a chance it's going to happen. It's just, I'll procrastinate. I'll put it off. I'll forget, all that stuff. So that's just one example. That's kind of a side road there. But I think when you think about your domains, think about the different seasons of your life that you're in. And some of you'll be focused on different things than others of us will.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to another question I'd ask folks to consider is, are any of these accounts, whatever you call them, what are these buckets, that you've divided your life into, these domains, are there any of them that in the next 12 months need a disproportionate amount of energy or focus?
That's good.
And so there may be something, pick something randomly, your finances. You may decide that you need to pay down some debt, and you're going to put more time, energy, and effort on that over the next year than you have previously. And that may have a ripple effect in some of your other accounts. For me, when I took an early retirement from the chicken after about 45 years, I asked him how long you had to stay for a full retirement, but that was another story for another day. And I decided in that, well, really the 2 years since then, I've put disproportionate time and energy into my health and my fitness. Shame on me. I had neglected that during the last season of my career. And so I have doubled down on that. And I've spent more time, energy, effort, and financial resources trying to be fit and to be fit to lead. And so think about that. You may not have anything that needs disproportionate time, energy, effort, and focus, but you might. So don't miss that when you're doing your plan.
Okay, Mark, I think something you said last week, I'm going to pull back into this week. You challenged the team and the organization to think 10 years out. Look, while we're on these domains, these buckets, what would it look like for you to ask yourself the question, what do I want to be true in each of these areas? My faith, my fitness, my finances, my family, my work. I mean, you pick any of them. What I want to be true in a decade that's not true today in those. And I think in the same way that you just alluded to, we can actually start taking steps toward that. And let's go back to what I said last week from Henry Cloud, play the movie forward. 10 years is going to come. I think if we start taking steps toward that, your health being an example, you're going to, that you and I read a book last year called Younger Next Year. And it talked about I think the guy his age was 80. He was talking about, or maybe it was just a life expectancy of for a man is like late 70s or whatever. And he said, just picture your life going off a cliff or picture it just going downhill. He said, you want to go off a cliff. You want to be healthy, strong, vibrant, able to get in the floor with the grandkids, hang out with people, play golf, whatever you want to do, with flexibility and mobility and energy versus just, getting to a point where you're 65 and you start going downhill and it's just doctor's visits every day. And that's all you still live the same amount of time, but it's a different quality of life. And part of that is because, you're thinking differently about that area. And so just like that area, you could think about your finance, or your fitness. You could do that in all these other areas as well and start living accordingly, leading accordingly. And I think it could drastically change some of those things and ultimately create more impact down the road.
Yeah. So 2 thoughts on that. One of the phrases that he used in the book that really captured my imagination is that aging is mandatory, decay is optional.
Yeah, that was
And
great.
so, again, the name of the book was Younger Next Year. And I'm happy to say, as of my last physical, I'm younger, not chronologically, but biologically, I'm younger than I was a year ago. And so that's the track I'm on. And I'm giving some disproportionate time, energy, and effort to that. And that's what I don't want you to miss.
Yeah, time on task, focus. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And what last thought? You mentioned the 10-year thing, and 10 years is great, but I paid a coach a lot of money several years back. It's probably been 15 years now, and he challenged me to build a life plan.
Yeah.
And the way he framed that, he asked me to consider, what do I want to be true in 30 years?
Yeah.
And then live your life in an attempt to make that dream and that vision a reality. So some of you want to be really bold. You think about all these categories, these domains, these accounts. What do I want to be true in these areas in 30 years? It makes it much easier to build your annual plan because you're just taking steps toward that preferred future.
Well, I'll tie into that. As we think out to that preferred future, it does give you the chance now, as you think on your plan, to go back and say, okay, what specific actions do I need to take in each of these areas to get to that preferred future? What, in other words, over the next 12 months, what am I going to do? It's like, it's great to have a dream, but dreams come true because we do stuff toward the dream. So, we get very tactical there for sure.
Yeah. At some point, the plan needs to include tactics. What are you going to do? It's fantastic to begin with an aspiration. I think that's the only legitimate way to plan, is to have an aspiration and then figure out how to get there. But yeah, the plan has to degenerate to tactics, and the more specific there, the better. So here's another question I would ask folks to consider. Once this plan begins to take shape and you kind of know what the future looks like, or you'd like it to look like, even if it's just a year, don't minimize the value in planning a year out. And you think, okay, in my life, I want this to be true and that to be true in a year. One of the questions you can ask is, who can help me on the journey? Maybe somebody you know, maybe somebody you have to hire. Maybe it's an accountability partner. Maybe it's a trainer or a coach. A financial professional if you're trying to work on your finances. But I hope that you're striving for things that you can't actually do on your own. I hope you're striving for some things that are going to require the assistance of others, because we can do more together than we can do alone.
That's so true. And I think back over my last, I don't know how many years, 15 years at least, Mark, we've been a part of a group together, and I'll just say a little word. And I think we're going to talk about that next week. So I'll save that, but I'll just say this. One of the benefits of that, one of the best parts of that group to me is every year we've all done an annual plan, and we put that plan in front of each other. And to your point, to know that you've got people encouraging you and supporting you and asking you about it, that accountability, you're just not going to get away with a lot, if you've got a group of people around you who care about you that are trying to, strive. It's the old, what's the old competition? We don't think it doesn't mean what we think it does. Competition means to strive together. We're all getting better together. And I think when you got the right people around you, again, you may need a coach, you may need a mentor, you may need a group, a lot of ways to do that. But this is so powerful when you have some people trying to help you get where you're going.
Yeah. Hey, and I will mention this, kind of a shameless plug here. If you guys don't know, we've got a team of coaches who help leaders and have for almost a decade. We've coached thousands of people to help them accomplish their personal and professional goals. And so if that's of interest to you, you just need to reach out. Maybe we can help.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, if you're looking for a Lead Everyday coach, just info at Lead Everyday. Again, email us. We'll get you connected. Okay. So I got another question. Let's talk for a second about how you make your plan what I'll call a living document. I always think about my brain's kind of weird here, but I think about it being more like a greenhouse. Let's think greenhouse here, not a sheet of slice and bake cookies. I mean, I think sometimes we think a plan. I'm just gonna, it's just everything's gonna be perfect and all that. It really is a living, breathing document. Let's think about our plan that way. And I like the greenhouse because there are things I'm guessing over this last year that have gotten a little overgrown, and you're going to need to prune some stuff back. If you're going to add something this next year, you're going to need to probably delete something from this last year. I mean, because you're not going to get any more time. And so I like the idea of my plan being something that serves what I'm trying to become. I don't serve my plan. My plan is serving me. And so that would be the reminder I'd have for everybody there. I think about it that way, Mark. I don't know if you would agree. I think you would, but love to hear your take on that. But this idea of it being a living document, I get to change it if I want to.
Yeah. And you may recall that you referenced our group and the fact that we've been building these plans and sharing them and getting input from others in the group for decades, even for a decade before you joined us. We were doing this same activity.
Yeah.
And I remember just a few months ago, I mean, we did a mid-year plan review and everybody brought their plan out. And we said, okay, what have you learned, back to where we started today's conversation, what have you learned in the last 6 months that would lead you to modify your plan? You wrote it in pencil. You didn't write it in ink, right? And have you learned? Have you grown? Have you got new responsibilities? Have you got new circumstances? Do you want to raise your goal, lower your goal, change your goal? And one of the guys in the group who's been with us for 2 decades, he said, this was a really good reminder that we can actually change our plans. Like, sure, you can change your plans. You said it. It's a mechanism. It's a tool to serve you, to facilitate your growth and development. And so you need to make it a living document. One more thing I'll mention is I already said that I've identified an impediment to my plan execution is if I don't review my plan often enough. And so I have a goal. I don't make it every day, but my goal is to review a summary of my plan every day. And the more I review my plan, the more likely I am to execute on my plan. That's just one of the things I do to make it a living document. One more idea. I did a mind map a few years ago because I try something new all the time.
Yeah.
With my plan. For those that don't know what a mind map is, you can look it up, but it's basically a visual representation of something. And I put it as the screensaver on my computer. So my plan was constantly in front of me. And I've tried all kinds of things over the years, and who knows what I'll try next year. But I'm trying to make it a living document as opposed to something that is just done and filed away.
Yeah, go back to the adjustments and the living document thing too. Let me say one more thing about that. One of my favorite, I don't think I've ever told you this. One of my favorite things we do is every year we submit our first draft. We don't start with our final plan. We put the first draft in front of the group and everybody gets to critique it. Hey, you got more in you than this, or are you sure you can pull that off? I mean, it's all that kind of stuff. And then you get to go back and create your final with that council of buddies. Yeah. So there's a lot of power in all that stuff you're talking about. I love that.
Yeah. And one of the questions that somebody invariably asks is, well, wait a minute. Didn't you have something similar in last year's plan? How did that go? It's like, don't just repeat something because you think it ought to be in your plan. If it didn't work last year, what makes you think it's going to work this year? I mean, we have some of those real conversations, which is really healthy.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. One more question here. I think how are you going to celebrate? If you accomplish something in your plan, how you going to reward yourself? And I want to say two things here. Obviously your reward needs to be, I think we don't reward ourselves enough for all the stuff that we do. But I also think sometimes we reward ourselves with the wrong thing. And I'll give you an example for me. I've thought through this a lot and go back to the younger next year mindset. When I think about my fitness, there've been times in the past where I used to run a lot. I was running some marathons. I would reward myself with maybe something sweet or something that really wasn't that good for me. I get a big meal because I ran 20 miles today. I probably did need the calories, but I didn't necessarily need something that wasn't good for me. So it makes no sense to me to reward myself with something that's not good for me. That's just one little warning there for anybody out there. But I would say you do want to have a way to reward yourself, a way to appreciate the achievement. I mean, I think it's important to do that. And so I think we could celebrate better than we do, most of us. And so I'd put that in my plan. If I was going to, if I do this, we get that, or we get to go here or visit there, whatever. You get to decide what that looks like. But I think this, to me, put it in your plan. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I got to get better at that.
Yeah. I think we all do.
That's all the strengths.
Okay. So, you got, you got any other reminders? I know, Mark, I mean, we're now into October. It's really time, I think, to start working on this, right? I mean,
oh, I think so, because a couple things, kind of closing thoughts for me. It's a process, and we've already talked about how you want it to be a living document, and you may tweak it and make adjustments. But I've always challenged myself, and I've challenged the guys in our group. Don't be working on your annual plan on January 20th or February 15th. Start early enough that you at least begin the year with a plan. And again, you can modify it, you can change it, but if you're not careful, there's a lot of stuff going to happen in the fourth quarter, and it'll come January and you'll go, I really don't have a plan for growth and personal development for the new year. So yes, start now. You may want to do drafts. You may want to find some trusted colleagues, family, friends, mentors, coaches to share that draft with. And here's another radical idea. You may want to get input from people on what should go in your plan. And maybe it's your spouse or your significant other. Maybe it's your supervisor. They might fall over if you walked in and said, hey, I'm building a personal development plan. What do you think I need to be sure to include to focus on over the next year? They might surprise you, and their answer might be really, really helpful for you as you think about that career domain, that work domain. Because if you're not working on the stuff that your boss thinks you need to work on, you're probably going to get in trouble. So if you start now, you can get input, you can do drafts, you can share it with people you trust, and be ready to hit the ground running at the first of the year.
That's fantastic. Okay. So I want to leave everybody today with with something I ran across years ago. It's actually a Bible verse, and it's about a guy named is King Jotham. And most of us like, who is King Jotham? You can find this verse in, I think it's 2 Chronicles 27 verse 6. And so, like, what does that have to do with it? Probably not a lot of people spending time reading Chronicles today, but here's what it says. It says that King Jotham became mighty because he ordered his ways before the Lord. And I love that reminder of, like, if you're going to have a mighty life, you need to give some thought to how you're going to order your life. You can't just wing it and hope to have a legacy. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so, Jotham became mighty because he ordered his ways before the Lord. I would encourage you, if you want to be stronger, give some thought to your plan. It really will give you focus. It'll give you intention. It'll tell you what to say yes to, what to say no to. It'll create more impact than you've ever had before, especially if you've never done a plan before. But even if you have done a plan, make your plan better for this next year. Mark, a few years ago, you and I talked about what would we have to do to make this next year our best year. That's a question that we both should be asking, each other again this year. It's like every year, let's keep seeing if we can up our game, get better, grow more, help more people. And I think it comes with a well-ordered life if we can do that. So that would be our challenge for you today. Love to hear your thoughts. Anybody out there, info@leadeveryday. Again, you can communicate with us And I hope you'll continue to share with your friends and family. Join us next week. And remember, the best leaders lead every day.